Good morning, everyone, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises. I'd like to firstly apologize for the late start. We had a bit of a delay and a couple of little technical issues, so I appreciate your patience in bearing with us. This inquiry this morning is for the purpose of examining the operations of Caribbean Airlines Limited with a specific focus on customer service and to explore what might be some of the possible solutions to the challenges being faced by the company. Just to be clear, the role of this committee is to firstly examine the issues which arose based on our company's written responses to the committee's questions, and secondly, to aid and support the company in improving its operations, resulting in a more efficient and effective organization. For your information, this meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement via email to parl101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter @ttparliament. I would like to take the opportunity now to welcome the officials of the Caribbean Airlines Limited, and I would like for you all to introduce yourselves, and also in the introduction, I would like to get from you how long have you been with the airline, and so that we can gauge your tenure. So I would like to begin with, I see the chairman is here. I would like the chairman to begin the process, and I'd like each member to identify themselves and indicate how long they've been with the company. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair.
Chair, good morning, and committee members. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for inviting Caribbean Airlines to participate in this hearing. I'd also like to thank the committee for acceding to our request for a deferral from December to January. We sincerely appreciate that being granted to us. I'd also like, as part of my opening comments, to wish all members of the committee, and by extension all members, all persons in this room, a successful 2017. May it be a productive, safe one, and may the Lord's wisdom be provided to us to take our country through the period that we're in. I am Shamir Rani Mohammed, Chairman of Caribbean Airlines. We are a relatively new board, having been appointed at the end of October 2016. I'm joined this morning by my Vice Chair, Mr. Michael Kwamina, our Acting Chief Financial Officer, Marina Chase, our Senior Revenue Manager, Adrian Agarat, our Acting CEO, Captain Jagmohan Singh, our VP Human Resources, Ms. Hyacinth Guy, our VP Commercial, Sean Kwong Singh, Corporate Communications, Dion Legal, Head of Legal, Nalini Lala, and our VP, Mr. Corville Carrington. I should inform the committee that we do have with us this morning representatives from the Ministry of Finance, Ms. Permanent Secretary Phillips, and Mr. Lester Herbert of the Audit Department, Ministry of Finance.
Thank you very much. Could each member of the Caribbean Airlines team just indicate across the line? The chairman has indicated your title. Could you just tell us how long you've been with the company?
Mr. Adrian Agarat. I've been with Caribbean Airlines since 2007.
Marina Chase. I've been with Caribbean Airlines since 2007.
Okay.
Michael Kwamina. I was appointed along with the chairman at the end of October 2016.
Good morning, Jagmohan Singh. I joined Caribbean Airlines 2007 as a check airman, and I was appointed acting CEO end of November 2016.
Good morning. Hi, Cynthia. I joined Caribbean Airlines June 2014.
Good morning, committee. Sean Kwang Singh, joined Caribbean Airlines 2007. Substantive position is Executive Manager for Network and Distribution, and I'm currently Acting Vice President Commercial since April 2016.
Morning, committee. Colville Carrington, Vice President, Maintenance and Engineering. I joined Caribbean Airlines 15 December 2006.
Morning, committee. Nalini Lala. I joined Caribbean Airlines January 2011.
Good morning. I'm Dion Legault. I joined Caribbean Airlines in May 2015.
Thank you very much. I will now, yes, thank you very much. I'd like to officially acknowledge the President and Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here and to support the work that the committee is doing. I would like now to introduce myself. I would ask members of the committee to introduce themselves. I am David Small. I am the chairman of this committee. And beginning on my extreme right, I'd like the other members of the committee to introduce themselves.
Yes, my name is Wade Mark, member.
Brigadier General Ansel Antoine, retired, member.
Lester Henry, member.
Adrian Leons, member.
Alison Bash, member.
Fazal Karim, member.
Thank you very much. And it's important to also acknowledge that the committee is ably supported by a series of members from the Parliament who are all here, very, very good professionals supporting the work of this committee and the work of the Parliament. And I want to acknowledge that we couldn't get the work done here without the wonderful support we receive from the members of staff of the Office of the Parliament. At this point in time, as we begin our inquiry, I'd like to request all persons in the room to make sure that their cellular phones are either switched off or placed in silent mode so we avoid any untoward disturbances during the hearing. And I would like to indicate that the committee has received the submissions from Caribbean Airlines in response to our questions. And I think that they've generated quite a bit of discussion, and you will hear certainly from the members of the committee where we have some issues that we will raise. At this point in time, I would like to ask, even though I gather you kind of did it, but I would like the chairman of Caribbean Airlines to make a few brief opening remarks on his view of the company before we begin this formal inquiry.
Check Caribbean Airlines, we recognize that it is a state enterprise of one that is of significant importance to not just our national development but regional development. The airline has been in existence for 10 years. In earlier period of January, we would have celebrated our 10th anniversary. The airline in its present position, and I will just refer to a bit of statistics if I can, for the year January to November 2016, and I'm trying to provide as current statistics as I can. We would have operated almost 14,000 flights. Our passengers would relate to approximately 868,000 passengers during that period. In terms of operations, 52% of our flights is operated on the domestic air bridge, representing 52%, of our flights is on the air bridge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would now like to begin the inquiry, and I would like to remind both committee members and the officials present that you would please any responses or their questions through the chair, and that you would kindly activate your microphone whenever you're making a contribution, and please switch it off when you're done. So I would like to begin the inquiry by firstly tasking the CEO and perhaps the chairman also to help put a frame around what we're doing. Caribbean Airlines, as we know, is an airline. They're running an air travel service. But the world of travel has changed, and the description of airlines varies. So I would like to get from the company, how would you describe yourself to someone? We have low-cost carriers, we have ultra-low-cost carriers, we have network, we have all sorts of descriptions for airlines. I want to get from Caribbean Airlines, from either the CEO and or the chairman, what is your view? How would you describe your airline in terms of a category that it fits into that helps us to understand the frame around which the airline, within which the airline operates?
Chairman, thank you. Caribbean Airlines started off with basically the model of a legacy carrier. We have seen competition come into our area, and the competition has been basically the low-cost carriers. We have moved towards, and that's towards that model. Currently, we would have what would be described as a hybrid model. That is a combination of the legacy and a movement towards the low-cost carrier. We are addressing our cost structure, moving that cost structure towards the low-cost carriers structure. To that end, we have had the assistance of ICF, and first of all, building a strategic plan. We then moved towards the assistance of Lufthansa in developing that strategic plan, and in 2016, we have looked at a total strategic plan. Therefore, we have addressed the reduction of costs, the enhancement of revenue, driving towards a break-even point. The 2015 Lufthansa plan recommended that we reduce our fleets. We have stopped the operation of the 767 fleet. We have reduced the number of aircraft on the 737 fleet. And we are doing a fleet review, both on the turboprop as well as the jet fleets. Those fleet reviews, given that they would be decisions made that would affect the airline's business in the medium and long term, those reviews are taking the attention of a full team with regards to fleet reviews, and we continue those reviews currently.
Thank you very much. I'm receiving your information that you view yourself as a hybrid, where and that is actually the fastest growing segment of the airline business now, where because there's been so much segmentation, this is my understanding, that there's been so much segmentation that airlines who were in one particular group before, but can't necessarily segue to another group, have had to form themselves around a particular formula of activities. My concern remains with the passenger experience. And this is why we're here. This inquiry is focused on your delivery of customer service. So that when you look at other airlines who describe themselves as hybrids, and there's a whole long shopping list of them. But regionally, one of the clear competitors is an airline called JetBlue. And perhaps I have had too much experience understanding the passenger experience on an airline that describes itself. How would you describe the passenger offering that you have as a passenger, someone just coming to Caribbean Airlines office or purchasing a ticket online? How would you describe that experience as someone purchasing a ticket? Is that something that you're totally happy with at this point in time?
Chairman, through you, if I may ask Mr. Kwang Singh, the commercial.
Good morning once again, Chair and committee. There is always room for improvement, and we've recognized that we have to continually improve and view our customer as the foremost important of why we exist as an airline. We tend to break it out into a number of areas in terms of the customer service, supports, technical, regulatory, and the human interface. So we have made huge strides in the technical aspects, which support our team and in turn support the customer. So we have moved from a seater-based system to a PSS called Amadeus, is one of the premier systems in the world, used by 120 airlines in the world, and 3 of the mega global partnerships, One World alliances, and so on. This has offered us a number of positive things in terms of being able to build in business rules and the regulatory rules, which help mitigate any challenges we have in terms of any customers not being accepted for whatever paperwork they may be needed, visas, etc., and allows the agents to be able to focus more on human interface. The regulatory stuff, we bound ourselves by the most stringent ones, and the most stringent tends to be DOT-type regulatory frameworks that protect the customer from any sort of deviation from what we offer or we intend to offer. Those frameworks go across the entire network. And then the human interface. We built in a number of things that are happening through the organization. In our culture change and behavioral changes, we recognize those are needs for those things. We've also recognized this need for recruitment, and we focus a lot on people's attitudes and behaviors. And we have also built in with that schedules.
Mr. Kwang Sing, permit me to interject. I just want to get from you the passenger experience. How would you, as the person or perhaps one of the group of persons in the leadership of the organization, how would you describe your passenger experience? Is it comparable to other airlines that are grouped as hybrid, or is it something that you are aspiring towards, that you need to do some work towards? That's what I'm trying to get from you, how you see yourself. Is it that you can say Caribbean Airlines passenger experience is comparable to other airlines that are offering services in the so-called hybrid group, or is it something that you recognize that we are not there yet, and we recognize that there's a gap, and we're working to plug those gaps to bring us to where we need to be? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Chair, if I may answer that question in the context of Caribbean airline operations. First of all, we need to recognize that in terms of numbers, 52% of our flights and 36% of our passengers travel on the domestic air bridge. So we'll probably want to treat the domestic air bridge a bit separate from our international network. What we can say is that Caribbean Airlines, we do conduct customer satisfaction surveys. And if I may say that those surveys have reflected that we do have exceptionally good customer satisfaction rating.
Okay, I accept that. I am asking. Let me try to put it in. How would you, if someone says you are head of Caribbean Airlines and our passenger experience is comparable or not to others offering similar services in the region, to your competition, is it comparable or is it something that needs some work to improve?
I will say that it exceeds what is available in the region.
It exceeds what's available in the region?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That helps me with a response. I now give the floor to Mr. Karim. MP Karim, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me add to the chairman's welcome to all of you, and particularly the chairman of the airline and the vice chairman, senior executives, to wish you a very happy new year and a very successful future with Carl. I think when I look at the clock behind me, we may have started within your OTP of 15 minutes, so we're kind of on schedule since you are here. I just wanted to get straight into some of the important matters, and I'm looking at the org chart that you would have sent me. Now, an airline, for example, as Caribbean Airlines, is a very important national asset to Trinidad and Tobago, and has contributed in its predecessor days with BWI for a number of years to the welfare of our citizens and also to the country. But over the last year, I noticed that you have not had a substantive CEO, nor have you had a VP of Commercial Operations. Mr. Kwang Sing, I think, is acting in that position. But we're running a commercial operations. Can you indicate why these positions have not been filled to date? Could you give us a sense as to what was the process? You don't have to give us the names. And by when you expect that these positions will be filled. For example, the CFO had acted, Mr. Tang, as the CEO before now. And clearly, I will ask a subsequent question, but for an operation like this, it is my view that you must have substantive persons in positions of critical decision-making like these.
Remember, when the board received its letters of appointment towards the end of October, I think my second duty at Caribbean Airlines would have been to sign an appointment letter for Captain Singh, and that would have been perhaps 2 days of receiving my letter of appointment. What I can say is that the previous board engaged the services of HRC and Associates to fill 2 key positions, one being the office of the CEO, the other being the office of the Chief Financial Officer. As a board, we elected to continue that process because we recognize that the organization needs permanent appointments at the leadership position. So much so that I can report to this committee that last Thursday, we actually interviewed candidates for the CFO and the CEO position. We do believe that what is before us in the case of the CFO, that there is a strong likelihood that one of the candidates interviewed last Thursday will be appointed. However, at the CEO level, the shortlist that was presented to us, only one candidate have elected to move to the interview process, which we did conduct last Thursday. And therefore, we believe as a board that we should not interview only one candidate, but perhaps go back out to market and identify individuals that are suitable for the office of the CEO.
Thank you very much. Might you be able to advise the committee, and then by extension, since we are live, the national community, by what time you expect, the latest time if we were to ask, that you expect that these appointments will be made? And secondly, there are a number of other vacancies we see that have not been filled on the establishment. Could you identify those vacancies? Or I may have it here, I just want to confirm, and by what time you expect those vacancies also to be filled?
The top priority for the board will be the office of the CFO, CEO, and by extension, which is not on the org chart, but we recognize that the airline requires the office of a chief operating officer. In relation to the CFO position, we believe at the end of February, we'll be able to confirm a person. In relation to the CEO, we are unable to commit except to say that we recognize and we are treating with it with extreme urgency in having that office filled. One of the things that the board is mindful of is operating in haste and making unsuitable appointments, especially at the leadership level. So we will be looking for the best talent that is available at the CEO and COO levels.
Yeah, just a follow-up. Mr. Chairman, you know, I recognize in all things haste might not be the most expeditious decision, but you had 15 months. Since we had a new administration in place, I mean, you may not have had a new board, and we can see that, but certainly a matter like this should have been, in my view, attended to quicker than now. As a follow-up, the Office of the CEO, let me congratulate Captain Singh, because he would go into the records as being there. I have a clipping of the newspaper when you celebrated the 10th anniversary. Congratulations to that. But I noticed that you have 75 persons who report to the CEO. Now, some of that may be very necessary. It may be security, it may be other things. Will you elaborate as to what constitute these 75 persons, and is it normal? And if so, do you get the efficiency and the productivity with one individual, the CEO, have into account directly, in addition to the entire 1,500 plus of the 75.
Member, thank you. On direct reports to me on the org chart, there are 12 persons, as shown on the org chart.
I'll just refer you to the item number Roman numeral 2 on the management structure, which is page 1 of my responses that I have from you. So I was just really referring to that. If there's a change, you can so indicate.
Chairman, through you, I'll ask Ms. Guy to respond on the CEO's office.
Thank you very much. The number next to the offices there reflect the number of people in the particular department. The CEO's office is a department, so it has 75 people in the office. But we have 12 direct reports to the Chief Executive Officer. Similarly, you would see maintenance and engineering, 340 is the headcount in the particular area.
Senator Bash.
Chairman, through you. Welcome to the Caribbean Airlines team. Pleasant good morning. This is just a follow-up question, well, a follow-up from Member Karim's question. Does the profitability of the company allow for such a top-heavy management structure?
One of the tasks that this board intends to undertake will be an entire review of our manpower requirements, not just at the junior, but at the senior executive level. At this point in time, as chairman, I'm unable to say specifically that we have the capacity to support that structure.
My other question points towards the strategic direction of the company. In your submission, reference was made to liquidity constraints and the Tobago Airford Bridge fare. One, what assets are being considered for liquidation? And two, has the proposed increase in the airbridge fare been sent to the Minister of Finance?
Member, first of all, in the context of the airbridge, that service is deemed an essential service, and we do move approximately between January to November of 2016. We moved in excess of 868,000 persons on the domestic airbridge. It is a significant number of people that we move. In relation to the fare on the airbridge, we are controlled. That fare is controlled by policy direction, and therefore the determination of that fare is determined by what level of support that the government would like to provide to the citizens on the airbridge. We do believe, and the records will reflect, that it's an operation and that is the airbridge segment. It is a non-profitable route for the airline, but we are committed to providing the support and the mandate that we have been charged with in providing that service.
Senator Bash, should you permit the chair? I have a follow-on to the chairman on this. I have also looked at the issues that you've had, and I am asking, is the only way out for Caribbean Airlines regarding the providing service, adequate service on the airbridge is a fare increase? Are there no other strategies available to an airline to say add-on charges? I know you've switched over to the Amadeus system that allows now for added-on services. So that I think the airline has to be creative rather than looking to the state. And my question is that because we operate in an environment where the state is constrained in the funds that it has. And I think that it's incumbent upon the airline in this situation to really look and say, could we propose something that does not necessarily burden the state any further? And if it's not palatable politically, well, that's a whole different issue. But at least I would think that someone in the airline could say, listen, let's institute a baggage charge. We charge the first bag free, and the second bag you pay $25 TT. Something. There needs to be some way that the airline looks the way and proposes to the Ministry of Finance that is palatable. I think that citizens, based on the feedback we've gotten, are not necessarily enamored of the style of entities that their only recourse seems to be getting more money from the state. So that, and certainly citizens are not in a condition to bear an increase. But if there are ancillary services and ancillary charges of the airline, has that been a consideration of the airline, and have proposals along those lines been made to the Ministry of Finance?
Chair, Caribbean Airlines, first of all, our fare structure on the air bridge is governed by certain rules, and that includes the ancillary charges that we can pass on to passengers. For example, we all, I'm assuming, have traveled and have at some point in time had to pay a day change fee. Caribbean Airlines, first of all, has been operating this route for the last 10 years, since 1994, at $300 TT. The subsidy on that fare has remained the same, notwithstanding operating cost in the airline industry is based in US dollars. So you'd recognize that maybe in 1994, currency of 4.75 to approximately 7 at this point in time, how much of an impact the airline have had. But I want to say to members that at the airline level, again, we are confined in terms of what approvals can be given for us, including something as basic as a day change. Mind you, we also have, in terms of service that we're referring to, over 25% of our passengers are no-shows, with no consequences or no charges passed on. Additional bag charges. We have looked at a series of initiatives that we believe can be passed on as a direct cost to customers without interfering with that flat fare that we operate in. But again, that is left to the authorities who govern those charges that we can apply to make the determination. We can only recommend.
So let me be clear. You have considered ancillary charges, day change fee, no-show penalties as applies across the entire airline industry in the world. You've considered them, but you've not made the proposal in ministry, or you've made the proposal and have gotten a blowback, or you're not allowed to make those proposals. I just want to be clear.
We can make recommendations to the various authorities in terms of what we would like to do. Those, unfortunately, the powers that be do not lie in the office of Caribbean Airlines. So we.
That is fine. All I'm asking is, as a management, you're running a business, you're running a route that's traveling almost 1 million passengers a year. You are losing money hand over fist. If the government and the powers that be, as you describe it, are not willing to grant a fare increase, I think it's incumbent upon the company to propose additional ways in which we think we can raise revenue to make the operation more sustainable rather than doing a fare increase. And I think it's incumbent upon the company to at least make the proposal, so that I would have preferred if you could sit here and say, listen, we have made proposals for these changes and they have not met favor with the powers that be, whoever those powers may be. So I accept your response, and I just wanted to be clear.
For clarity, if I can, Chair, those recommendations was in fact submitted, and we are awaiting responses.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think Senator Bash had a follow-up question. Senator Bash, you had a follow-up question?
My question was really, how has phase 1 of the new passenger service system, that's the PSS, right, benefited the company thus far?
They are both, one, customer service benefits in terms of how we are able to identify the customer such that package it for them, and two, benefits in terms of efficiency and cost benefits. We have recognized somewhere in the vicinity of about 20% savings in the software comparable to what we would be using previously.
I now ask Senator Henry has a question. Senator Henry, you have the floor.
Morning, everyone, and Happy New Year to all of you. Before I ask my question, I have a number of questions, but I'll just take a couple in this round. Just want to preface it by saying I spent a lot of time dealing with Caribbean Airlines as an opposition senator between 2010 to 2015. So I'm a bit, I have to be a bit cautious in terms of some of the questions I have in mind. But to follow up on the Tobago Air Bridge situation, right? What I've never really gotten is a explanation as to why is the route really unprofitable and what are the real constraints on making the Tobago operation viable, right? We hear a lot of old talk, but we've never heard a proper explanation as to why is it so difficult. Is it just a matter of raising the fare to something that would become bankable, or are there other issues? And secondly, the type of aircraft that is being used now, we've been hearing a lot of complaints about the ATRs being down. And you have to send a jet halfway through the day to take up the slack. And I would also like to get it into the public domain as to what are the implications when things like that are done for the financial viability of the company and the route. Because we'd never get a proper explanation of these things. I'm not sure if one of the operations or the financial people might want to tackle this.
Chair, if I can respond to member last question first. In relation to the ATRs, first and foremost, we need to inform the public that Caribbean Airlines' safety record is first and foremost. As an airline, we recognize that there's no room for error. Any error in the aviation industry is catastrophic. The airline has a very sound reputation in terms of its safety record, and we'd like to place that first and foremost in the public domain. The question of the reliability of the aircraft. One needs to recognize, and I say this in the context, I'm not an aviation engineer, nor is Carl an aircraft manufacturer. But we will speak to of our experience operating that type of aircraft. In or around 2011, thereabouts, a decision was taken to move Caribbean Airlines away from the Dash 8s that it traditionally would have operated to a new ATR fleet. The then chairman would have ordered or bought 9 of those aircrafts. 4 was subsequently cancelled, so the fleet comprised of 5 ATRs. What is unique about that specific utilization of that aircraft? Caribbean Airlines was a launch customer in the Caribbean for ATR. So those planes had no history, or that specific model, if I might say, had no history operating in the region. Caribbean Airlines acquired those aircrafts. But we also need to understand the difficulty in operating the air bridge. The aircrafts undergo, yes? The aircrafts undergo an extreme heavy cycles, that is takeoff and landings, but it's also a very short flight. You're limited in terms of the altitude you can get to for cooling. You're also have the high impact of the ambient environment that we're operating in, RE corrosion. And what we have done, and that is this new board. When we came in, one of the first things that we elected to do, because of the unreliability of the ATR fleet, which predominantly services the domestic air bridge and some of our regional flights, we felt it fit that the president of ATR Americas should be summoned to Trinidad, because we felt that for too long, those issues have been allowed to occur. The president of ATR did come to Trinidad, and we do have very specific undertakings from ATR to find us, and we're not stating at this point in time whether it is a manufacturer's issue or a maintenance issue. But we need to drill down in terms of what is causing these planes to be so unreliable. And we have received a commitment from ATR that a suitable person will be identified and dispatched to Caribbean Airlines to assist us in determining the issues behind the non-performance of those aircrafts.
So, Mr. Chairman, are you saying that the ATRs have been a disaster?
I will not want to refer to an aircraft manufacturer and their product as a disaster.
In the performance, not. Yeah.
We are unable to determine that at this point in time, because we're not certain whether a different aircraft type after a period of use might not suffer the same issues and challenges. So we would not want to get to those conclusions too early.
Okay, but I also wanted to get some clarification for the public about the cost consequences when you have to use the jets to cover for these ATRs. Do you have any information on that? Anyone on the committee?
Chairman, through you to member, we have developed a schedule for the air bridge. And in developing this schedule, which we used in 2016 and will use in 2017 for the air bridge, we have identified the peak demand periods on the air bridge. It is not possible to provide the level of lift that is required, and when we examine the demand, we see that, for example, the high demand on a per week basis will exist at the end of the work week, usually starting midday Friday, and work its way into Saturday. And then everyone wants to return on a Sunday. So the demand is directional, mostly directional when the peak demands occur. And so in order to meet those demands, it is required of us to supplement our lift capability with jet aircraft. We have therefore built our schedule for 2016 and 2017 going forward with jet aircraft operating on the route.
No, I would like, as taking a hint from my chair, I mean, I would like to suggest that if you could provide some of this in writing, but I'm still not getting an answer in terms of the cost implications. It's all good that you mentioned that you built in the jet into the schedule, right? So you already cater for the peak periods on the Sundays as you outlined, but I'm not getting an idea of what escalation in costs, because if, as the chairman said, the ATRs running into problems because of a short flight and the altitude and so on, what are some of the what that should be amplified when you use a jet?
If I can, member, for clarity, we'd like to suggest that it operates around, the cost is around 3 times on a jet versus an ATR.
Thank you very much.
If you permit me, I would like to interject as we're talking about the ATRs. I have a question from a member of the public because I understand the Twitter page and the Facebook page are quite lit up. So I have a couple of questions from a member of the public that are along the lines. And one of the questions asks, but we spoke about the issues about the ATR. How many of the ATR fleet are currently operating? It is the understanding here provided that a couple of them are down. How many of the ATR fleet are currently operating?
3 of the 5 ATR aircraft are operating.
How many of them are operating specifically on the air bridge service of that 3?
I would say that they all operate on the air bridge.
They all operate on the air bridge. Okay, and another question also is that one of those particular ATRs, the registration number 9YTTA, within the past 14 months, there's been 5 incidents of hydraulic leak, engine fire indication from October 2016, 2015 to December. There's been 5 essentially in-flight emergencies causing the flights to have to do things that they don't normally have to do. 5 incidents on one aircraft in 13 months tends to flag that there's something deeper. So that this aircraft, the registration is 9YTT, and this is public information. This is available, that you can find this on all of the good places where the wonderful team at the Parliament found it. I would like to ask a specific question on that particular aircraft, because you have an aircraft that had 4 fire engine indications within 12 months. Something suggests that there's something endemically wrong. Is this aircraft on service, or is this one of the aircraft that is currently down?
Chair, that aircraft, as a board, I believe it would have been on my first day, and the first call I received from the acting CEO would have indicated that there was a warning. We need to inform the public that first, there's been no fire on board. There's no evidence of any fire in our engines. Those are simply warning indicators. We took a decision that TT Alpha will be grounded. We felt that the frequency of that occurring poses a risk, and therefore we have grounded that aircraft, and it is in that context that ATR was summoned to Trinidad to provide us with a definite plan in identifying what is wrong with that aircraft.
Is there any ability for the company to be able to say to ATR, listen, we have an aircraft, and in the aviation world, 5 indications of, even if they're just an indicator going off, 5 indications in 12 months is highly unusual. Is there any way that there can be some mitigation from ATR rather than we're just sitting waiting on them? We purchase the aircraft from them. 5 years for operating is relatively young in aircraft years. And an aircraft, given this type of indication, is there any recourse that Caribbean Airlines has to ATR regarding this specific aircraft?
Chair, I'm delighted that you've asked that question. What we have found as a board of peculiar interest is that investment was over $200 million US. Persons at Caribbean Airlines found it fit to waive its right to sue the manufacturer. As a board, when we were made aware that this warning started, I think, in 2014 or 2015, thereabouts, and continued for that long, as chairman, I felt that was totally unacceptable, and therefore some level of urgency needed to take place. We have obtained a legal opinion from our attorneys in London, and we are looking at all possible options that are available to the airline in pursuing whatever course of action that is deemed necessary.
Well, I thank you for your response, because it is deeply concerning to me as a fairly frequent traveler. When you go on the website where that logs these, I actually have a subscription, and I get emails and responses when there's issues. So that 5 indications, even if nothing actually occurred on the aircraft, it tends to signal that there's something fundamentally wrong, and I would ask the company to make sure it pursues whatever legal options are available, because there seems or it suggests that there may be something wrong with this aircraft. Okay, that I was just dealing with a question from a member of the public, and I weaved my particular issue into that as it was related. I now would like to give the floor to MP Leons. MP Leons, you have the floor.
Chair, thank you. Before I ask my question, just on the last note you raised, you said that persons at the past waived the right to sue the airline. Is that the manufacturer? Sorry. Is the legal advice geared towards the manufacturer alone, or also that the persons or personnel that would have been engaged in that negotiation?
Member, Chairman, through you, if I can respond to the member, the contract that exists between ourselves and ATR provides for a 3-year warranty period, which in my mind on a brief reading suggested it's somewhat short, but it has a 3-year warranty period. In exchange for getting the 3-year warranty period, the contract waived certain rights thereafter. We are at present exploring the legality of that waiver in an effort to see, as the chairman pointed out, what avenues are available to us insofar as recourse is concerned in relation to the concerns that we have in relation to that particular airline. And just to also comfort the chairman, the fact about it is that this precisely was the subject matter of the meeting that we had with ATR, to point out the fact that the regularity of these warning lights coming on is unacceptable. And as I say, ATR has had their top engineers in Trinidad for a substantial period of time looking at the aircraft, and as the chairman said, there's somebody here on a permanent basis, and they also brought their top engineers, and then there's now going to be somebody who the chairman has required them to install in the country, somebody of a very high level who will look after the aircraft to ensure that there are no reoccurrences of these events.
Chair, through you. When do we anticipate a resolution of this issue?
Well, we have told, ATR has already responded to our, and I would put it in demands. We met, I think, probably on a Tuesday, and they were required to respond to our requirements by the Friday, which they have done. The person is expected to be in the country within the next month, I think, or something to that effect. And you would also, ATR has also supplied an aircraft, a wet lease aircraft, as a consequence of our requirements at their cost. So to supplement the shortfall in services as a result of the grounding of the TTA, the 9Y TTA aircraft.
Okay, thank you.
Much
Does the Spanish airline?
It's Swift Air.
Swift, okay. Okay, the question that I initially wanted to ask was based on your 2016 strat plan. Now, you all outlined a series of recommendations based on the strat plan, and some of these would have been, as you, Chair, would have mentioned earlier, the fleet review and a study. I'm seeing that you all also spoke about implementation of certain items like fuel efficiency dashboard. My question is, in terms of the strat plan, being a 2016 strat plan, are there any objectives within the end of 2016 or within a biannual objectives, and what are the achievements based on the strat plan, or what achievements we plan to achieve in the short to medium term?
If I can take you to page 10 of our submission. In relation to our 2015 strat plan, continuing from there, we would have retained the 767s, which was one of the key objectives. We also reduced the 737 fleet. We continue to consolidate our Kingston operations. The outstanding item from the 2015, which fed into the 2016, basically remains the fleet review exercise. In 2016, we have completed the network optimization. We have commenced the new brand and culture transformation. We continue to focus on the cost management and revenue enhancement. And again, from 2016, the only item remaining in the 2016 strat plan is the fleet review.
Chair, through you, can a copy of these documents be made available? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before I move on, I think Senator Mark is next on my list. I just want to say that the questions from the Facebook page and the Twitter feed are coming in. So I will entertain Senator Mark, and then I will try to deal with, because members of the public are clearly interested in what's going on, and we keep getting them questions flowing. So I have a whole page of questions from the public. But I'll now ask Senator Mark to take the floor. Senator Mark.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning to everyone. I know that the chairman mentioned, and I tend to agree with him, on the safety record of Caribbean Airlines. But in the last few years, 2 years, we have had some very unfortunate incidents, accidents on the ground, particularly at Georgetown International Airport. I think that is Chetty Jagan International Airport, which has caused some concern in the minds of the public about the safety record of Caribbean Airlines. I'm wondering whether you can share with this committee what is the status report on, I think, 2 accidents which occurred at that international airport in the last, I would say, 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. What has happened? Who is responsible? What has been responsible for these developments? And what measures have been taken to ensure that these accidents, in quotations, do not repeat themselves in the future? That is a concern I would say the public has as it relates to Caribbean Airlines. The other one I would like to raise, you can take a note, is your cost structure strategy, where you are seeking to get into that low range costing, as you have mentioned. Is there a time frame that you have set yourselves to make Caribbean Airlines break even and then begin to show signs of profitability? What is the timeline for that to happen with Caribbean Airlines? And Mr. Chairman, if I may ask another question before I get my responses. What percentage of Carl's aircraft or fleet is owned and controlled by the people of Trinidad and Tobago? What percentage is leased by Carl? And what is the accompanying costs of such an arrangement? And is there any plan or plans by Carl to upgrade and enhance its fleet, which I must admit, many of them appear to be dated. And I believe in the 21st century, Carl need to modernize its air fleet, particularly on the international routes. I would like to know whether there are plans afoot by Caribbean Airlines to modernize their fleet and give the passengers not only value, but give them comfort in many respects that might be in deficit at this time. These are my initial questions. There are many more that I have lined up for Caribbean Airlines management and the chairman, but these are my initial concerns. The public is also worried, and that is why I'm speaking on this particular, on these issues, to get clarification, for the public to feel a sense of comfort as we go forward. Mr. Chairman?
Member, if I may respond in no specific order. In relation to aircraft, the company operates 17 aircrafts. The 5 ATRs is owned by the airline. The 12 737s, they're leased aircrafts. As a percentage, approximately 30% is owned, 70% leased. In relation to the fleet review, we have recognized that it's not just the cost of travel, but traveling needs to be a customer experience. From the point of getting online to buy your ticket, to when you check in, to when you board the aircraft, to the experience on board the aircraft. And our fleet review exercise captures all of that. You have a demanding public that has been exposed to functioning headsets, individual monitors for entertainment system, more comfortable seats, larger overhead bins, and therefore our fleet review exercise, which is taking place as we speak, captures all of those concerns that you have raised. While we do have aircrafts that are not new, we need to see that they are very safe and reliable. And that's why we continue to fly them. Our fleet review will capture not just the customer experience on board, but what aircraft is best suited for the destinations we need to fly, the routes we operate on, the reliability, and the cost. And that exercise, I want to assure you, continues as we speak. in relation to the profitability of CAL, I feel firm to say that we're making that turn. And I would like to thank the team at CAL for that, resounding effort. They have recognized, and mind you, as a taxpayer, I'm very concerned about what we spend monies on. And therefore, we do believe in 2018, we should be able to break even. Our numbers indicate that 2016 was better than 2015. Our numbers suggest that 2017 will be better than 2016, and therefore we remain hopeful that by 2018, CAL perhaps will no longer be a burden on the taxpayers. In relation to our safety record, in Guyana, the incident involving the Fly Jamaica, I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to, an incident perhaps about 2 months ago, and then one in 2011.
Yes.
The most recent incident, we make no determination on that matter, and therefore we will offer no comments except to say that that is being investigated at the moment. In relation to the 2011 incident, I will ask Captain Singh to provide the specifics on that.
Chairman, through you, member, the incident of 2011, runway overrun, was investigated by the authority responsible for Guyana, Guyana Civil Aviation. They enlisted the assistance of the National Transport Safety Board of the USA. Caribbean Airlines participated fully in that investigation. We were therefore informed very early in the investigation on what may have occurred that caused the accident, or incident rather. Having obtained the knowledge, we immediately started remedial training as well as training for all crews. That included pilots and flight attendants. The actual finding of the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority was that it was caused by human error. You'd find that the majority of accidents or incidents in the aviation business can be put down to human error. Therefore, it's important that we learn from incidents and accidents, and we learn as soon as possible so that we may take the correct actions in training our crews. Therefore, we carried out full training, and when the report was eventually laid, we found that we had conducted most, if not all, of the training that was required for our crews.
Mr. Chairman, I know you have your people, but may I ask a question on the air bridge? Mr. Chairman, through you. What is the actual cost, the economic cost of a ticket, a return ticket to Tobago? And what is the actual subsidized cost for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, the taxpayers, at this time? Could you share with us what is the actual cost in terms of value? What is supposed to be the real cost of traveling to Tobago and back? And what do we pay as customers? And on a yearly basis, Mr. Chairman, through you, what would be the subsidy coming from taxpayers in TNT to maintain and to sustain this air bridge between Trinidad and Tobago? I think that is an area that people would like clarification on as well.
Remember, first of all, let's state the existing costs. It's $300 round trip,
Right.
which the airline receives a subsidy of $100 TT per adult passenger. We do not get a rebate or a subsidy for any child who may be occupying a seat on the air bridge. In terms of the air bridge subsidy, the Minister of Finance will, in presenting his budget, make an assumption of the estimated number of passengers that we project to move on the air bridge over an annual period. For 2017, the sum of it's approximately 41 million TT dollars has been budgeted for CAL as the subsidy on the air bridge. In relation to operating cost, we estimate that figure, depending on the price of fuel, in or around the $600 to $700 range round trip.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going down my list. I have MP Karim next. MP Karim, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman of the airline, much has been said this morning about the ATRs and their purchase. I want to ask whether there is any truth that the decision to buy, the recommendation to buy the ATRs were made before 2010. I have some other questions I want to follow up on, but I want to get specifically whether there was a recommendation to purchase these ATRs before May 2010. The other question I want to ask is, you spoke about 9YTTA, and you have 9YTT Delta, which has been out, you indicated, but you didn't say for how long. Is it for the same reason that both aircraft are now out of service, maybe at various occasions? Is it that same problem that they are facing? And another question I wonder, I know you have been stressing quite a lot, and we also look forward to that when we purchase a ticket, that we purchase an experience on the aircraft, on the airline. And I know that you are looking at the wow experience of customers. But you operate a fleet of 12 Boeing 737-800, and I'm dealing with that now. Can you tell us on a flight, wherever, and particularly to the northern destinations, out of the 154, I believe those are the seats you have, what percentage of those seats are serviced? So, for example, with blankets, with headphones, because I read in the newspaper about another experience which I'll raise later on, but I want to ask you that question specifically. Because if we have to compete with other carriers and we are not satisfying the customer needs for a simple item, which I'm advised, and therefore I'm asking you to confirm, what percentage of the 154 seats are serviced with blankets, headphones? It might sound trivial, but my substantive question goes back, was the decision to purchase the ATRs made before this, or the recommendation was made before May 2010?
Remember, in relation to customer experience, if I can address that first.
Sure.
All of our passengers are provided with headphones. However, we must recognize the fleet of aircraft that we're operating, that all headphones may not be operating, and therefore I am unable to tell you we have 500 seats and 2 isn't operating. I'm regret to inform you that I cannot answer that specifically. Pillows and blankets. I travel on many airlines. If you look at the many budget carriers, for example, American Airlines, which is now, I think, considered a budget airline, JetBlue, Spirit, etc., you have to pay for those pillows and blankets. And the question of what percentage is available, again, we can't answer that in the context because you may have 154 passengers on board. Do you assume that 154 would like to have a blanket or a pillow? We do carry supplies on board, and we try to meet the demand of the customer while on board as far as reasonably possible. Unfortunately, I don't think any member of the team can give you a very specific answer that we carry 5% pillows per flight. The availability of these items is all subjected to what is on board and the passenger load that is on the aircraft. In relation to TT Delta, that aircraft did suffer a series of warnings. However, based on the reviews by the ATR team that was dispatched to Trinidad, that aircraft was scheduled over the... A test flight was done on Saturday. It was successful. The engineers identified that there may have been an air inflow issue, and therefore we remain hopeful that that aircraft, having undergone a successful test flight on Saturday, will be back in service shortly.
Okay, but there was a...
And in relation to your 2010 inquiry, in terms of whether decision was made before in May of 2010, I have asked the members who are with us today, and they are not in a position to confirm whether or not such decision was made to buy the ATRs prior to May 2010.
Okay, I was asking about the recommendation to buy the ATRs before May 2010. I want a specific answer. Was there a recommendation made by whoever would have been? Because you see, I'm raising this in the context where you have persons acting in significant positions. And we have to be honest to identify whether the person who is in charge, the chief executive officer acting, is also the accounting officer, or is there somebody else? We have to be able, this is a very serious business, it's about life and limb and so on, but it's important. So while persons may be of the persuasion that what has happened is the previous administration may have bought, and one of my colleagues used an adjective to describe it, I am asking whether on the records of Caribbean Airlines, if we were to do an audit, whatever it is, will we be able to find that a recommendation existed for the purchase of the ATRs, which is ATR 72-800?
Remember, what I can say is that we rather not speculate in giving an answer. If it's a question that you would like us to respond back to the committee, we will be more than happy. But we are prepared to speak in terms of what is available for us, and that is those aircrafts was purchased in 2011.
Okay, I would like to have it in writing with the chairman's permission, but with respect to the air bridge, is it correct to say, and I don't know the frequency, that you operate a jet service, one of the 737, out of Tobago, non-stop to JFK? And if that is so, if there's a JFK route, I'm just asking. If it is not so, well, then I'll withdraw the question, or I wouldn't further it. But if there's a route that is serviced by a 737, how did that impact upon service in the air bridge in the light of 2 of your ATRs being down?
Member, when this board was appointed in late November, one of the things that we informed the management of Caribbean Airlines, there was an anticipation of moving in excess of 10,000 passengers, or maybe closer to 15,000 passengers over that December period. And we took a decision in the context of, first of all, air safety to ground aircrafts. But we were not prepared to disrupt our passengers who would have planned months ahead on their vacation. We took that that undertaking in the context that, irrespective, for use of a better word, the cost to the airline, we have an obligation to move our passengers that have purchased tickets. We did, over the Christmas period, wet lease an aircraft, a jet aircraft from Miami Air. That aircraft operated the Port of Spain Fort Lauderdale segment. We utilized our jets on the air bridge. We consolidated flights, but most importantly, we were able to move not just our confirmed passengers, but every single standby passenger on a daily basis to their destination. In regard to the jet aircraft, there is a jet service that starts in Trinidad, it stops in Tobago, and then there's an onward to JFK.
Once per week.
Once per week, and the same on a return segment.
Could you indicate what is the payload on that? How well is it doing?
Before we get to the payload, I would like to say to the members that that segment, the airline receives support from the THA in operating that flight.
Could you also indicate what that support is?
Member, through the chair, I don't have the numbers in terms of how much it is for each year support, but I do have the load factor that we annualize about a 65% load factor on it between Tobago and New York.
Do you think that is satisfactory in terms of the investment costs and the subsidized costs? We'd like to have, Chairman, to you the costs in
Yes,
writing.
I think we can request, we will formalize request in writing. The Chairman would like to interject just to quickly follow up on something you raised. Mr. Chairman, the first question I asked is about the passenger experience. And how would you describe your passenger experience? And before that, I had asked, how would you describe your airline? Because if you're running a hybrid airline, if you're running and you're grouped as a hybrid airline, issues that have been raised by the members as free pillows and free blankets do not arise. So that this is where sensitizing your customers to what you are going to do and managing their expectations is important. So if you, as you've indicated, your airline's view is that you are trending towards being a hybrid airline. Other hybrid airlines do not offer those services for free. They offer them at a cost. And if customers understand that this is, and I'm helping you with why I asked that question first, so that I can cascade, everything flows from what you see the company as. So that's very important for us, so that the question that the member asked as to whether or not you provide these services, you should be able to have been able to respond to say, we are a hybrid airline. The service model for that airline indicates that this is what we provide, and these are a la carte services. I mean, I have a big graph about, what hybrid airlines offer and the whole group of airlines. So I understand the business very, very well. I myself have personally sat on aircraft for over 3 million miles. So I have traveled, so I understand the varying offerings. But let me stop there. I have a question, and it's about the costing. I understand your view about making sure that all the passengers who've paid for tickets end up getting to their destinations, and that is laudable. But there has to be a cost element in there. I understand that when you had to lease the aircraft from Miami Air, And because it's a US registered aircraft, you can't use it on a domestic. You have to pull off one of your international 737s off of its service to run the domestic route. But the leased aircraft is also totally coach class. So that persons who purchase business class tickets that were expecting to fly on a Caribbean Airlines service to Orlando had to be refunded their money because the plane was a totally coach service. Now, this is information I found on your website, so this is no company secret. There's a release to that effect that you had to refund. So I'm saying, in hearing you, that you're trying to make sure that your customers are satisfied. If I, 3 months ago, purchased a ticket to fly business class, and then on a few days before, I'm told I have to fly coach, and you're refunding me the difference, that diminishes my customer experience. Granted, you would have granted a refund. And these are the type of things that concern me. And I want to understand this whole chain of events that the ATRs went down. You leased an aircraft, but you leased an aircraft that did not allow you to provide the full service. Was it that is the only aircraft that you could have found in a short space of time to provide the service? I need to understand the chain of events that happened there.
Chair, so what occurred was something that was not envisioned, nor was there any contingency plans where your peak period, not just for domestic, but international travel, December is a very heavy month for travel. Therefore, when we took such decision, we looked at all available options on short notice. Not just CAL, but many other carriers wet lease aircrafts to assist during their peak periods. The team at CAL, I can assure you, looked at all available options that we could have in terms of a suitable replacement type for the ATR. Unfortunately, there's few operators within the region, and very few that was made that could have been made available to us on short notice. The aircraft that we wet leased over the Christmas period operated on the Fort Lauderdale route, not Orlando route. And I can say that the Fort Lauderdale route, in analyzing what route we will fly that aircraft on, we have the least number of business class passengers on that route. Beyond that, passengers was offered the option of flying to Miami as an alternative. Passengers was given the option for a refund, or the option also of having a day change if they so choose. Mind you, it's not an experience we want our customer to have, but we try to make that as minimal on the customer experience and giving the customer as many options available to them.
I just have one quick follow-up. Given that the genesis of this problem is the ATR going down, and you had to wet lease an aircraft to plug a hole in your international service because you had to take one of your international service jets out of service to service the domestic route, is there any consideration for ATR on assisting Caribbean Airlines with compensation in this issue?
We would have addressed that, and that's why my vice chair would have said that one of the demands that we made of ATR is compensation. The Swiss Air aircraft that is on lease for the next 2 months is being fully funded by ATR as a consequence of their aircraft not being able to fly.
Okay, thank you. I now give the floor to MP Amtwine.
Pleasant good morning. I want to go back to the air bridge. And in your response, and I'm quoting from you, said that the route it's become unprofitable. And in your response, you have said you have made proposal to the Ministry of Finance. There's a third party in this tripartite, THA. All right? But I have not heard any mention of the THA. If the route is unprofitable, are we only dealing with passengers? Or what about air freight to Tobago? My question is CAL functioning or working both with the THA and with the Ministry of Finance, and of course with the Ministry of Tourism, to make this air bridge profitable? And are we only dealing with airfare or airfares in terms of passengers? But what about this bridge between Trinidad and Tobago? Because Tobago is heavily dependent on the Trinidad tourists coming to Tobago for all sorts of reasons, right? So in your discussions, in your proposals, are you taking into consideration the Tobago House of Assembly? And is there a tripartite talk between THA, Ministry of Finance, and CAL to make this air bridge profitable?
Member, first of all, I'd like to say this in the context of one, it's an essential service. Two, and very few essential services in this country is operated for profit purposes. We recognize, so much so that within the short space of period that I have been appointed, I've visited the THA on 2 occasions, so much so last week I met with the Chief Secretary, and previously in early December. The Caribbean Airlines team was also dispatched to Tobago to meet with the THA. That being said, we are committed to engaging all of the stakeholders. That includes the Chamber, the THA, the Hoteliers Association, and any others, for they to have a greater appreciation of what the cost is, but also we recognize that there's a wider role in terms of not just air movement, but the national development of Tobago and the country at large.
Senator Bash.
Can the existing profitability of the airline sustain 15 passes to each member of staff for free travel? And furthermore, what factors influence the decision to increase the number of free passes from 15 to 20 in 2016?
Remember that first of all, I'd like to say there's nothing that's free. And we need to look at that in the context of companies and their operations. We have asked the management team, because I do recall somewhere in the questions here that answer was not provided. And as a board, we are also interested in the context of how many of those tickets that would have been available to staff member, how much was utilized, and we're ascertaining that information at this point in time. We're also trying to assess, the rationale behind the movement of what would have been a lower sum to a higher sum of tickets being made available to staff and for staff travel.
Thank you very much. I now have to ask Senator Henry to take the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I would like to turn to two issues that I have quite a great amount of interest in and get some responses from the team. One is the London route that was discontinued recently, and the issue of the 767s. Are we, or is the company currently wet leasing a cargo 767? Is that true or not true? If you can confirm that. And are partial leases being paid still to this company that we got the 767s from? That's dealing with the London part of the operation that has subsequently been discontinued. And my second set of questions has to do with the Jamaica operations. And can you give us an update? I sat in this parliament several years ago, and we got updates on what was the breakdown in terms of the operational difficulties with the Jamaica operations. Have we seen a turnaround in terms of profitability and some of the major issues of staffing and so on that was happening with the Jamaica operations? And I was informed during a particular period in time that we spent a lot of money training pilots who subsequently left without giving proper service in return for the amount of money that we spent on training them. Is this problem still existing at the airline? So two parts, the 767 questions and then the Jamaica questions, including the profitability and also the staffing issues in terms of the pilots and the training that we gave to Jamaican pilots in particular, or foreign pilots, not to pick on Jamaicans. And many of them subsequently did not stay with the airline, but moved on to greener pastures. What is the status of that?
In relation to the 767, there's two aircraft type, passenger and cargo. Caribbean Airlines does operate on a wet lease arrangement, a 767, with a freighter company, and I'm happy to report that that segment of our business is very profitable under that business model arrangement of the wet lease of a freighter 767.
Can I stop you for 1 second, please? If it's profitable as a wet lease, didn't we train pilots to fly those same 767s? So why would you wet lease?
No, that's a freighter aircraft, not a passenger aircraft. It's dedicated for freight, and therefore we do not provide crews on that aircraft. I suspect you're referring to the passenger 767 that operated the London route.
Right, those are wet leased.
Yes.
Those are dry leases.
Yes, dry lease, yeah. So in relation to the 767 freighter, yes, Caribbean Airlines does wet lease one of those for freight services.
Chairman, through you, member, regard the Jamaica operation and training of pilots at the absorption of the Air Jamaica routes. There were routes flown by Caribbean Airlines, and we had to do conversion training for the Air Jamaica pilots, who were at the time qualified as Airbus pilots. So therefore, in order that the Jamaican pilots would operate our 737s, we analyzed, first of all, the number of crews that would be required to operate those services. Based on that, we trained crews. However, what we discovered that there was a high attrition rate initially with the absorption of the route. So we did train Jamaica pilots operating out of Jamaica on the 737 who chose, for different reasons, to move on to other carriers. And we have seen that attrition rate reduce significantly over the last 2 years. So we now have what I would term a stabilized numbers for Jamaica in terms of the number of pilots operating out of Jamaica.
So are you saying that there was nothing binding the pilots after we trained them on this 737? There was no contract or requiring them to stay with Caribbean Airlines after receiving the expensive, I assume training is expensive, so I could use the word expensive training to convert from the Airbus to the 737s. There was no stipulation that they had to work for us after getting this training?
The pilots received contracts from Caribbean Airlines, and included in those contracts was a requirement for repayment of training over a 24-month period. So those pilots who left Caribbean Airlines, having received training, would have been asked to make repayments towards their training.
Just the overall profitability and the status of the Jamaica operations currently, could you shed any light on that?
Remember, the latest figures that we're in a position to report would be as of November 2016. And if I am correct, our Jamaica operations, except with the Kingston-Toronto route, shows negative.
Thank you very much. All right, before I go to MP Karim, I would like to pose two questions to the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance, who is here today. And if you'll permit me, the question that, this question is a response to a point that was raised earlier, advised by the chairman, regarding the company making a proposal to the Ministry of Finance to allow it to charge ancillary fees as one way of trying to break even on the Tobago route. I'd like to get a response as to whether or not the ministry has looked at that and is in a position to give a comment. And also, I would also ask if the ministry has ever given consideration to looking at the Tobago service as is described as an essential service and to providing total coverage for that service, and rather than have the airline be struggling to find ways to keep it afloat, have it been totally covered by the state. I know we're in a currently constrained revenue situation, but has there ever been consideration to that? Madam Permanent Secretary, you have the floor.
Yes, Chair. We did receive the request for the additional charges on the air bridge, and we are requiring additional information from CAL in order to come up with a position on the matter.
Would you be able to say when you would be able to complete your consideration? And how long has it been that you received this information? And could you give us a guide as to when you think you may be in a position to respond?
We received the information in October of 2016. And once we get the information from CAL, we should be able to give a decision by February. So.
Mr. Secretary, the other issue, could you please?
Yes, the other issue. The ministry has never considered having to reimburse CAL for the total costs of the airbridge subsidy. No consideration has been given to that.
Thank you very much. I now go to, thank you very much, Madam Acting Permanent Secretary. I'm advised if I have ruffled any feathers, please forgive me. I didn't mean to. I now go down my list. I have MP Karim requesting the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You did indicate that there were some of the adopted routes of Air Jamaica that were not doing so well. And I suspect that apart from Guyana, which is really the Guyana, New York, JFK, which is one of our cash cows, as it were, do you have any plans to drop any of the routes and to engage in new routes? That's the first question. The second thing is, given the circumstances of the day today, and you did mention that the airline should be looked at as an essential service, and we know what is happening in the country. I don't have the current state of Petrotrin at this stage as we speak, but what contingencies have you put in place? Maybe it mightn't be your answer, but I'm just asking, as an airline, you must have had deliberations in the event that an occurrence like this happens today. What plans, what contingencies do you have in place to make sure you have your A1 fuel to have the airline running? And the third item I wanted to raise is with respect to the 767. Can you say whether the 767, which was engaged to Caribbean Airlines and leased to Caribbean Airlines, that aircraft is being used by Air Canada to service the Barbados and Port of Spain route? And if that is so, do we have any contingent liabilities attached still on our books for that 767? I understand that ILFC, and I know about the leasing company, but I wanted to deal specifically with the matters I've raised.
In relation, member, to the Jamaica routes, as I said earlier, first of all, I believe that Caribbean Airlines should not be a charge to the Ministry of Finance. The fact is that we should envision ourselves as being a commercially viable enterprise. That's the mantra that I preach at Caribbean Airlines. The issue, the management team on a monthly basis prepares a P&L by route, and we compare that to budgets. And it's only if you make such a determination will you know whether you should continue to be in a market or not. At this point in time, we believe that the markets that we operate in, that we should continue to serve those. In terms of expansion, we do believe that if we can get the ATR issues resolved, that there's a window of opportunity that we can grow this airline much more regionally without the addition of aircrafts.
Can I just ask, since you're on that topic, is it possible you can tell us, if not now, if you can supply us at another time when writing, your individualized routes and what your PL is on it?
We'll be happy to provide that information. But yes, Caribbean Airlines, we have recognized that there's opportunity for us to grow with better utilization of our aircraft. We believe that with better utilization, we can in fact fly greater frequency, more destinations. We're looking at new opportunities within the region as we speak. So much so that on one of those destinations, we have already made the application and we're waiting the approval from the regulators. Of course, the impending issue, we've been in this room, so I'm not sure whether or not Petrotrin and the union have been able to resolve. So we're unable to say, except that, Carl, we have made contingency plans to ensure that we continue to operate our schedules. We do have arrangements in place with NP, and we do have arrangements in place with the various airports that we fly into in terms of taking fuel from those destinations in. The 767 in relation to whether or not Air Canada is operating that.
Air Canada Rouge picked up the lease on that.
We know Air Canada Rouge picked up the lease on that aircraft. I'm unable. Yes.
Not all of it. We asked her committed, I think, to February 2017.
Okay. I'm being informed that not entirely, but we do have commitments on that lease until February 2017.
So in other words, we also have a liability for an aircraft being operated by Air Canada Rouge that comes to Trinidad. And our 767 could have been utilized, I'm just looking at the business model now, out of Trinidad onto YYZ or out of Chedijagan onto Toronto.
I don't know the specifics of the lease in relation to ILFC, but what I can say is that generally the aircraft types is also dependent on your frequency to the destination. And I will want to suggest that based on our, not just once, but in some instances twice or three times daily, that perhaps the 767 might not have been the best type of aircraft to operate.
Well, that might be debatable, in terms of I know you're looking at Airbus versus Boeing, and that we could argue that another time. But I just wanted to ask you in terms of because the Minister of Finance did indicate that 2017 might be a break-even point for the airline, and you were indicating 2018. And in view of that, and we're talking about petroleum, how are you going to be paid your $42 million from Venezuela, in US or Bolivars? How are you going to get this money? Has there been any discussion on this matter with the recent visit to Venezuela?
Yes, remember, and I would wear a bit of foreign diplomacy here. I have to say that Trinidad and Tobago have engaged, not just with this administration, but the previous administration in terms of the repatriation of those funds to Caribbean Airlines. The airline remains hopeful that the commitment given by the government of Venezuela will materialize. Of course, we have to recognize that those assurances have been given in the past, but we do believe that through diplomatic channels, that those funds should be repatriated in due course.
Mr. Chairman, just a side question. As I indicated before, Mr. Chairman of CAL, that you have been stressing quite a lot on the customer experience. And on page 28 of your responses to customer service policies and strategies, Roman numeral 3, you mentioned your OTP within 15 minutes of industry standard. We have the figures up to for 2015. Might you be able to tell us what that OTP figure is for 2016? And I raise that in the context. Did you have any situations of concern recently, maybe because of the season or whatever it is, with respect to the turnout of flight attendants from Jamaica? And if so, could you elaborate on that?
In relation to the Jamaica crew, I have been told that we had a higher than normal sick call-ins. However, all of our flights we were able to man with our own crew. In relation to on-time performance, the statistics on, I will use the air bridge as one portion and then overall. In the context of operating over 14,000 flights on the air bridge annually and moving over 900,000 passengers, it's important to note that for 2016 on the air bridge, we had a 78%, January to November 2016, we had a 78% on-time performance on the air bridge. Domestic and internationally combined, up to for domestic. Sorry, and so for 2016 on the domestic air bridge, we had a 78% on-time performance. And if you just allow me to kindly access some data I could respond to.
We could. I think to manage the process, I think you can supply the information to the committee. We will formalize a request because we're running up on time. I have one quick follow-up before I allow Senator Mark to take the floor. And it goes back to the first question I asked. When MP Karim asked you about routes, whether you're planning to drop any routes, you indicated that you're planning to sustain all of your existing routes. Here's my question. I look at your submission, and in more than one place you indicated that the New York route is actually one of your biggest routes where you're losing money. If you go on your website, you're running probably some days 4 flights a day. If you're running 4 flights a day and it is contributing to be in one of your, other than the air bridge, which we understand, but this is one of your marquee international routes and you're losing a lot of money. What do you have in mind to turn that around? And I go back to passenger experience. I've had a parallel passenger experience of leaving on your competition and coming back on CAL. And I would respectfully suggest, my experience is that the passenger experience the gap is huge. From sitting on a seat, and I'm talking flying coach in one aircraft, because they're all coach, and flying business in Caribbean. I'm sitting in what's called business, and the seat is broken, and it's all torn up. So I could understand why you're having challenges on that route, because the product needs some work, and I'm saying that. But so my question is, your JFK route is losing money on the submission you have. You plan to keep it. What are you going to do to allow you to turn it around?
Chair, just follow up on the previous member. I can confirm combined domestic and international for January to November 2016 on-time performance of 77%. I'm happy to inform member that we have turned around New York. Latest figures year to date suggest that New York is now positive. And therefore, I believe that the initiatives that we've been working on is bearing fruit. need not say we do recognize that there's a lot more that we have to do, and your concerns in terms of customer experience is both tied to equipment and person, and therefore our fleet review that we're undertaking will certainly address those concerns in terms of the customer experience on board.
Thank you very much.
But New York is in the positive.
I just shared because I want you to understand my logic. Passenger experience is key. If you fly the ways I've flown, I understand passenger experience. I've had the whole range, so that when I can tell you I go one way in coach and the passenger experience is superior to coming the other way on the same route in what's called business. I struggle. Forgive me, Senator Mark. I've kept you waiting. Forgive me. You have the floor, Senator Mark.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask the chairman or anyone who is willing to answer. Under the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, state enterprises are mandated to submit what is called annual administrative reports. Could you share with us when was the last time administrative reports were submitted by Caribbean Airlines, and based on the period, could you give us an undertaking as to when you will be able to satisfy the submission of those outstanding administrative reports? That's my first question. My second question has to do with just a follow-up on the chairman's question earlier. When does Carl, Mr. Chairman, either intend to purchase new aircraft or to provision relatively new ones on a long-term lease basis in order to enhance the customer experience, the passenger experience? I want to share my colleague's experience. I believe that even if you have old aircraft, but as you rightly pointed out, safety is critical. But I also believe you need to upgrade the product. And Mr. Chairman, I want to be very blunt and frank with you. I find that Carl's international flights do at times leave a lot to be desired. And whether, as my friend said, it is business class or it is ordinary working class, economy class, you find that the quality, the experience, very poor. I know that you are new to the experience of chairmanship, but I really would like to emphasize that there's need to increase the experience, enhance the experience. It does leave a lot to be desired. And that is why I asked the question as to whether there is any intention either to purchase new aircraft or as you lease aircraft, whether they can be relatively upgraded so that the experience of your customers, whether they are citizens of this republic or from the wider Caribbean, could be taken on board seriously. That's my second question. My final question has to do with an audit conducted by KPMG. I wanted to ask the chairman or whoever you like to designate or allocate the responsibility. First of all, there are two recommendations out of the series that I have before me that I would like to share with you. I go to page 12 of the KPMG's audit and management letter, and they speak to the issue of long-standing reconciling items dating as far back as 2007 involving unpresented checks. I don't know what is going on in that department. Unprocessed deposits in the bank statement. Processed deposits not identified. Wire transfers in bank statement not posted. Wire transfers not in bank statements. And you know, the KPMG went on to talk about the unpresented checks not being written off when they become stale dated. That is one aspect of a series of observations and accompanying recommendations. The other one I wanted to bring to your attention, Mr. Chairman, apparently there is some kind of ongoing dispute in this KPMG report between Caribbean Airlines and the Airports Authority. This is on page 21, where apparently the airports, the Caribbean Airlines, apparently is paying some 55 US cents per square feet. And we understand from the report, the Airports Authority is saying that you ought to be charged and be paying between $3.50 to $7.50 US per square feet, which could lead to Caribbean Airlines being in some very serious trouble in terms of outstanding payments, particularly in light, Mr. Chairman, where there's no formal rental agreement between Caribbean Airlines and the Airports Authority for the space it rents at Piaku. Now, I would like to find out from the team that is here whether these recommendations have been implemented, and if they have been, how have they contributed to improving the operations of the airlines, of the airline. Now, as I said, Mr. Chairman, they may not, the team may not be able to supply all the information at this time, but you can give us a crisp summary of where you are, and then provide us in a more comprehensive form a submission to the Secretariat. These are my three questions, Mr. Chairman, and would like to ask my colleagues to provide us with some responses, because they are serious matters here.
Okay. Member, in relation to administrative reports, I can confirm that these reports have been submitted to the Ministry up to 2015.
The Ministry of?
The Ministry of Finance, our administrative reports up to the year 2015 have been submitted.
Could you indicate to us when those reports would have been submitted to the Ministry of Finance?
July.
July of
2016.
16?
Yes.
And that would have covered up to 2015?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
The Minister, the Acting Permanent Secretary will have to answer why they have not reached Parliament. But continue, please.
We recognize, like the committee, aircraft type and customer experience. And I can report that the studies that we've done thus far have really brought us down to 2 aircraft type. So that should indicate that we've been moving with full speed ahead. The new fleet of Caribbean Airlines will and again, subject to what the final report will suggest, will be the 737-800 MAX or the A320s NEO. Again, we've narrowed down the aircraft type. We are looking at making a final determination on the aircraft type, aircraft availability, operating cost, staff training, all of the associated cost in implementing a new aircraft type. But we have recognized that Caribbean Airlines, to be a successful enterprise, must move in that direction. And we would like to give this committee and the wider public that we're moving towards that in the shortest possible time. Mind you, aircraft availability is not something that I say you go and you take off the supermarket shelf. And therefore, the fleet planning exercise will capture what is available out there for us to implement the best suitable type of aircraft. But
as you on that, you may want to share with us what is your targeted number that the management board could be looking at in the short to medium term period, having regard to what you have just said?
We're working with tight deadlines in terms of achieving the aircraft selection. What we also will be looking at is that interim period. What can we do with the existing interior of our aircraft until we get there? What is the associated cost? Is it feasible or not? So a detailed analysis is being done to guide us with making the right decisions. In relation to page 12 of the KPMG report that is dated December 31st?
Yes, it's a dated report, but
yes.
We have to implement the recommendation.
Correct. I will ask Adrian to address both page 12 and 21 of the report.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, committee, to Member Mark. Regarding the bank reconciliation, we did implement a number of the recommendations by the auditors. We, as the management team, saw a sufficient deficiency in how the bank reconciliations were being handled, and one of the first recommendations I made was to have a separate team deal with that, specifically because you're basically monitoring a number of accounts, international accounts in several countries. And we also decided to look at a policy where we would have all the stakeholder departments responsible for their adherence to making sure that things were processed in a timely manner. I would say at the end of 2015 and 2016, we started seeing some of the benefits of that. One of the things we noticed over monitoring some of the improvements that you needed a very strong supervisory control of that function, and we recruited somebody who has done an excellent job. So we right now within the policy mandate, no reconciliation items past 1 month, and we have a full and accountable review process at present. Related to the airport authority issue, if you with your approval, I think I would like to pass that on to Captain Jags, who could give a response on that.
Thank you, Adrian. If I may ask our Corporate Secretary, Legal Counsel to respond. Thank you.
Good morning, committee. There's been an ongoing dispute with the Airports Authority since the incorporation of Caribbean Airlines in terms of the rate to be charged for occupying the premises. And although I joined Caribbean Airlines long after its incorporation, the records show that there have been a back and forth on valuations and so with the rate. And I think as a result of that, this is why a lease has never actually been formalized. I do know quite recently our properties manager did obtain from the Commissioner of Valuations valuation as to a recommended rate. And we are in discussions with Airports Authority to come up with a compromise. The challenge is that while it may be a rate we can use going forward, Airports Authority is treating it as arrears that we owe. So we do have a good relationship with Airports Authority. We are in dialogue with them, and we are hoping to come to a point where we can deal with the arrears and move forward with a formal contract.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I could just pose my final question.
We run out of time.
We would like to receive, or if at this time you'd like to submit in a tight summary form your recommendations as it relates to the future viability of that very important state entity called Caribbean Airlines. We would like your good self, Chairman, to maybe provide to this committee what the perspectives of Caribbean Airlines board and management as it relates to the future of this organization in terms of viability, as I said, turnaround, profitability, and maybe some recommendations that you'd like this committee to consider as we look towards providing guidance to the Parliament of the Republic of TNT on the future of the Caribbean Airlines. So it's an area we'd like you to consider. And as I said, you can probably give us a tight appreciation now, and then maybe you can submit a more comprehensive submission to the chairman or through the chair, the secretary, so that we here would be able to have a better appreciation of, the thinking of the management as it relates to the future of this very important state asset called Caribbean Airlines.
Thank you very much. I think, Senator Mark, given the time constraint, I would like to, we will formalize that request in writing, because I can say pretty safely now, the view is that you will have to make a second appearance, because there's a whole, I have in front of me a set of issues that we have not been able to cover. And then from the public, we have pages upon pages of questions that we have not yet been able to delve into. So, but let me allow Senator Henry and after that Senator and MP Leons one final question each, so that we can wrap up.
Yes, I'm still distressed about the revelation that you, in terms of the ATR, that you cannot sue the company, and you have to go through such drama to get any kind of recourse. But just for the public, we haven't really discussed the overall profitability of the airline in the last 2 years, so we can get an appreciation, and the public would be informed as to the kind of challenge you have in turning the company around. So it could be just briefly summarized in terms of what has been the profit and loss 2015, and what is, if you have the figures for 2016. No, I want it stated on the record.
Before the CFO answers that question, I just want to make it perfectly clear that there's no indication from here that we cannot. We're saying that there are some challenges. Yes, there are some challenges. Much obliged.
Member, I would like to suggest that we not provide the financial information in the absence of audited accounts, and that if we can provide those in writing to the committee, one will appreciate that management accounts can defer to audited accounts, and therefore we will not want to give rise to speculation in terms of the accuracy of the numbers that we're providing.
But the 2015 figures are not in yet, or are not audited yet?
Thank you very much. But we will request the information you have, so that will be part of our supplemental information request. MP Leons.
Thanks, Chair. In your submission, you indicated New York, Toronto, and Tobago were your least profitable routes. Yeah? And just a while ago, you indicated that you were able to turn around New York, which is good. That same strategy is it being geared towards Toronto also? That's one. And the second one is the London route. I saw the challenges that you had with that route, and the to and fro based on management as to if to bring that route back or not. I understand it's not a profitable route. However, is there any consideration for future, for any strategy to bring that route back in terms of the service that Caribbean Airlines provides its customers?
In relation to the London route, it is not envisioned in our strat plan that we will be flying across the Atlantic in the near future. That route requires very specific aircraft types that will not be able to be efficiently utilized in our network. In relation to the profitability of our routes, two of our routes at this moment are showing small losses. We believe that the strategy employed on the New York route that historically showed a negative, that we can deploy that or additional resources to turn around those two other routes that have shown very small negative numbers.
Okay, I have the pleasure of trying to bring this to I have one quick...
Chair, if I may make
forgive
one
me,
comment, please. In relation to Member Henry, what I would like to say is, notwithstanding the accounts not being audited, I can say that 2016 numbers suggest that we have done significantly better than 2015. So having that in context, and Member Mark would have said, or I'm not sure which member, that the Minister of Finance suggested that by 2017 we should be able. We do believe that in 2017 we can do it, but we have given ourselves a little bit of leeway in anticipation of some challenges that we foresee. But the airline is in the right direction to become a sustainable enterprise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a quick question on an issue that I think you should be able to dispense with quickly. The U.S. Department of Transportation had a requirement for airlines servicing their airspace to provide regarding their website, making sure that their website is compliant regarding persons with disabilities. I'm aware that according to the DOT document I have here, that the deadline was the middle of December last year for the website to be compliant, to allow persons with disabilities to be able to use the website. I would like to just get confirmation that Caribbean Airlines met that deadline, or if you didn't meet that deadline, when are you going to meet it, and if there are any penalties that you will be suffering under the Department of Transportation rules.
Yes, I'm happy to report that Caribbean Airlines have met the requirement. The initial requirement was last year, and it was extended at 2 different points this year, the last being December 12th, and we are 100% compliant. with the WCAG requirements as laid out by DOT.
Thank you very much. Okay, as the chairman, I'm going to begin to wind up this meeting, and I want to share, I think that the Caribbean Airlines and its various, previous iterations have had a long history in Trinidad and Tobago. I personally can recall my very first flight was on July the 12th, 1977. And a young chap named Bobby Thomas was flying BW 424 Port of Spain to Barbados to New York. And it was a tremendously pleasurable experience for me, being a very, very young chap at that time. Don't worry about the Afro here now. So I have racked up a couple of 100,000 miles with Caribbean Airlines and its previous iterations before, in addition to the 2-point-something million I've racked up with other airlines. So that the airline has had a long history in Trinidad and Tobago, whatever the actual designation. I think every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago would like to see the airline do well, would like to see the airline be profitable, would like to see the airline deliver service that we can all be proud of. So I'm happy to hear from the responses today that you're starting to move in the right direction and that you recognize that there's some challenges along the way that needs to be fixed. I think we've pointed out, Senator Mark and myself pointed out some of the challenges. So that with that first part of my view, I think that Caribbean Airlines also presents the opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago to be an aviation leader in the region, and we've not really capitalized on that opportunity because we've been dealing with too many fires within the organization itself. So that is my preface to indicating to you that I would like to say that very likely you will be your entity will be recalled to sit before this committee again, because we have a whole range of issues. In addition to profitability issues, a whole range of issues that we've not been able to touch because of the time constraints. We are all conscious of the executive time in the room here, and we have a cutoff time regarding these meetings. So you will be recalled and you will be advised through the secretary of when that next meeting will be. And I think that we always remember that the committee here, our role is to help you. We want to understand your challenges and to see how we can work together along with your line ministry to see how we can craft strategies to get you in a place where everybody is comfortable and everybody is loving the Caribbean Airlines experience. So with those few words, I would like to ask the chairman to give us some brief closing remarks before I bring the session to a close.
Chair, certainly Caribbean Airlines and the management team considers it a pleasure to be appearing this afternoon before this committee. We remain committed and transparent to provided all of the answers that I believe was requested of us. We certainly will avail ourselves whenever this committee so desire for us to reappear next. We would like to assure the country that Caribbean Airlines remains the national carrier. We remain a very safe carrier. We are committed to fulfilling our mandate that we've been charged with. The team at Caribbean Airlines will respond to the challenges that we face as an airline and by extension as a country. And therefore, we are eager. This is the people of this country, I believe, they're also eager for us to make the necessary changes that is required for our existence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, members. Madam Acting Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Finance and her colleague, I think it's Mr. Herbert. Thank you very much for attending. I want to say a special thanks this morning from the members of this committee to the media and the viewing and listening audience. And I want to extend apologies to the viewing and listening audience because we have, I must say, quite a long list of questions from the viewing public that we have not been able to respond to in this session. But I want to give the undertaking to the members of the viewing and listening public that the questions that have been processed through our system, through Facebook, through Twitter, through email, the committee will make every effort to address and have those questions responded to properly at the next session that we meet with Caribbean Airlines. So thank you very much for everyone attending, and we wish you Godspeed. And again, from myself and from the committee, wish everyone who's here in this room and who's listening or who's watching, we want to extend our best wishes to you for a 2017 that brings us as a country into a better place than we started off. So I thank you very much.